So moving on next to the Waimaro, Fendleton, Waimari, the Waitai Coastal-Burwood Community Board. Chair Kelly Barber and Bibi Frail, good to have you with us this morning as well.
Bit of fight, yeah.
We got it first.
No, we weren't.
Yeah, we're scrappier than Pendleton.
Yeah, so as Andrew mentioned, the Waitai Coastal-Burwood Community Board has a submissions chair, which is Bibi Fraley, who is on the community board for Burwood. But I'll just read an opening statement. So, Waitai Coastal-Burwood Community Board would like to highlight our gratitude to the Mayor and City Councillors and Chief Executive, the Christchurch City Council staff and all the contractors who have contributed to the delivery of a wonderful array of recently completed assets in our area. The renewal of New Brighton in particular has taken a number of giant leaps forward, and with the completion of the revamped children's playground, the fantastic new Heipuna Taimawana saltwater hot pools, which are overprescribed just about every day at the moment, and the restoration of the New Brighton clock tower, with the New Brighton streetscaping almost completed, the rebuild of 2 local surf clubs underway, and the Red Zone regeneration team about to launch into life. There's a lot to be grateful for, and we're excited about the days ahead. We would particularly like to thank the Mayor for, during the election campaign, highlighting her desire to see a renewed emphasis on fixing Christchurch's eastern suburbs. We feel that this has started in earnest, but it is important that the COVID recovery plan doesn't overtake our long-awaited earthquake recovery. However, we acknowledge the current financial situation that the Council finds itself in with the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that this has had on the annual plan. As a result, we have made adjustments to our submission that reflect the need for financial prudence in the coming financial year. So, Phoebe.
Thanks. So I'm going to take the submission as read, but I'm happy to dig into any of the detail as we go. And I know that we understand around this table that our wards were the hardest hit by the earthquakes, the slowest to recover from them, and most of what our submission contains relates to the ongoing recovery and the need to address our earthquake legacy issues. So upon forming, our fairly new board quickly agreed that one of our central focus points was to improve the visual amenity of our wards. Beautifying seems like a nice to have when there's a lot else going on, but we know that it speaks to the psyche of our community. It's really hard to move on from what happened in our areas unless the physical appearance of our wards change. And 10 years on, we still have broken roads and shabby footpaths and temporary stop banks that don't seem to go very fast. And we understand that given the situation we're in, we can't expect to see an increase in levels of service in our area, but we would be very disappointed to see a decrease in the levels of service. It feels like we're just maintaining the status quo, and we don't want to lose that. And of course, we're encouraging our ward constituents to get in and make sure that they do the tidy up that they feel is needed also. You know, pick up rubbish when they see it, for example. The next thing to highlight is our disappointment that the Pages Road Bridge renewal will be deferred. This bridge is a gateway to Brighton, where Council has spent a lot of money recently, as Kelly has noted, on our beautiful assets, and we need all of Christchurch to support those assets for them to be successful. We want visitors to be wowed when they arrive in New Brighton, and at the moment the bridge and the roads into New Brighton are really underwhelming and they look really shabby. So we agreed that the Pages Road Bridge needs to be completed and the roads in need to be completed as a matter of urgency. I just want to touch briefly on Brooklands. I recently attended a public meeting out at Brooklands with Regenerate Christchurch, and I was really moved to listen to the locals speaking. I had no understanding previously of the issues that they were facing, and I still don't have a deep understanding of that. But I know I don't understand how we found ourselves in this situation in Brooklyn, but I don't think it's good enough. We haven't done the right thing by those locals, and we need to. I know that Council are working with locals to do basic remediation there, and that soon Council will become the red zone land owner in that area in the next couple of weeks. But so much more is needed in this area. There's no money allocated to the work that needs to be done, and it needs to happen. The final area I want to highlight is New Brighton. So we've mentioned development contributions in our submission, and I hope Council will take this suggestion seriously. Like Brooklands, Brighton has waited an unacceptably long time to have its earthquake legacy issues addressed. I know the issues are complex. I do understand how complex they are, but 10 years is too long. And I'm really pleased to see that council staff has picked up the South Shore, South New Brighton Legacy project from Regenerate Christchurch. They've been working really hard and quite fast, I think. They're making good progress and they are bringing the community along. So I'm really glad to see that that work is starting. But I would say that there's no point in engaging with a community and planning projects if the projects don't have any funding attached to them. These are not nice to haves, these are must do's. The money for the work should be in the annual plan. We haven't asked for that because of the situation we find ourselves in. But as soon as the work is planned, it should be started and the money needs to be found for this. The final point I'd make is that our board would not like to see the COVID-19 recovery be prioritised over finishing our earthquake recovery work. These communities have waited too long already, and let's not make them wait any longer. Time for questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Jimmy.
Regarding to Brookland, you recommend, the council might consider 200K on the annual plan. I'm not sure, but if in your word, you re-advertise, whether have any other, the items can be, it's less per advertise to kind of to trade off, etc., or not.
I think what you're asking is, can we move money from elsewhere to cover the cost of this? No.
200K, yeah. I mean, then you will kind of increase the operating cost, am I right? You put into annual plan, 200K.
Long-term plan.
Or long-term plan.
Yep.
It's not an annual plan.
We moved it out of that. We asked for it in the annual plan, but we revised our submission and asked for it to be included in that long-term plan.
Oh, long-term plan. Okay, thank you.
Given that the planning work is underway at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Pauline.
I'm looking at your comments on the excess water use charge for households, and trying to actually ascertain whether you're actually supportive of that or not. Maybe it was
good question, Paul.
But do you appreciate the fact that it's going to be very, very difficult for a domestic user to trigger that excess level anyway?
Yes.
And the consultation documents got really well presented diagram. And that might not have been out when you made your submission.
It was. We referred to it when we had our discussion. So what it says there is we accept the need for it. And we also did discuss the fact that it's aimed at targeting high users, and it will do that. And that actually, from a sustainability point of view, that's not a bad thing to have happen. But there's a concern that you start with a cap that's quite high, but it's very easy just to reduce that cap over time so more people pay, because it becomes a source of revenue for the council. And the temptation to do that would be quite high in a difficult financial situation.
Yeah, so that's your main concern, even though there is a cap now.
Yeah, that it can be changed.
For a long time.
Once you introduce something like this, it's kind of opening Pandora's box.
Yeah, that's your main concern, but apart from that, you're supportive of actually encouraging people to respect
I think what we say
resource.
is that we accept the need for it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, Leanne.
Just the Brooklands issue. So, because obviously I share your concerns, having been the representative for the area when the earthquakes happened. They are residential red zone though, and so they don't actually transfer to the council. The land doesn't transfer to the council till 1 July.
Yes.
So, and until 1 July, the only party that can promote a regeneration plan is Regenerate Christchurch. That will change with the law that's passing through Parliament at the moment. So I think that what you're asking for is just really a small contribution towards the cost of community-led regeneration planning,
yes.
That will be enabled under the legislation transfer to the Christchurch City Council on 1 July. So that's the context for your request,
Yes.
Is that we haven't been in a position to do regeneration planning in this area. We will pick up that ability on 1 July. And if we don't put some money on budget, just a small amount, just to get the community understanding that the planning tools are available really for another year under a regeneration plan, then that opportunity will go by, you know, without us. So, I mean, obviously there's some money coming back from Regen Christchurch, so is this an area where it
if
could
money
be
can
allocated?
be found elsewhere, that would be ideal. Yeah, and acknowledging that staff are already actively working in that area now.
And I think that that's been well received by the community, sort of at last.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, no, thanks, Bibi. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, that brings us to the end of the allotted time. Thank you very much indeed for the submission and for the work that you're doing. Thanks for joining us. I'm aware that there were a couple of people who had questions that we didn't have the opportunity to get to. What I'm trying to do is to share the question time equally among people, given that we've got a short period of time for asking questions. So I'm tending to go for people that haven't asked a question yet if people are indicating questions. Okay, so